I got the email maybe like 2 days after, telling me about the Super Day.
Nice.
So I was very pleasantly surprised. But also like I was panicking a little bit because I thought like, oh, yeah, I'm not ready for this at all.
Hey, this is Patrick Curtis, CEO and founder of Wall Street Oasis. Today we have another great chat with Andrew. Andrew joined WSO Academy when he was a sophomore at UCLA. He joined us pretty late, so it was early November when he started with us. Listen to all the struggles he went through during his freshman year, getting rejected from over 10 different student clubs, and how he turned the corner specifically with a lot of our mentors, and how it all worked out for him landing an offer at a great middle market bank. All right, Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Patrick. Really appreciate it.
It'd be awesome if you could just give the listeners kind of short summary bio, where you're from, all that good stuff.
So my name is Andrew. I'm currently a sophomore at UCLA. I'm majoring in economics. Originally from Boston, Massachusetts, currently, but now I'm decided
Celtics,
to
go
make
Celtics.
go Celtics. Yeah, but next year it's kind of over for us next year. But
Yeah, it's gonna be
hopefully,
tough.
yeah, hopefully something happens. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Decided that I wanted to go to UCLA. No real strong motivation behind that decision, other than I wanted to get out of the Northeast, see a bit more of the country. And yeah, that was pretty much kind of it behind my decision.
Nice. You're kind of done with the Boston winters, I guess, and wanted the good
Yeah,
LA weather.
for
Uh,
sure. Yeah, nothing really beats SoCal in terms
was it
of
like
a
a
college experience.
was it a culture shock a little bit kind of going to UCLA? Out of
I
curiosity.
think so. Yeah, I think so. I think people in SoCal, I feel like in general, they are much more free. I feel like they maybe it comes with the location, but I feel like they know how to enjoy life a lot more
Yeah.
than Northeast people.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give them that. So tell me a little bit about, so you get to UCLA, what, a couple of years ago, and are you thinking finance like right out of the gate? Are you're an econ major or a finance major right away, or like tell me a little bit about those decisions as you're kind of starting freshman year and kind of what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to go into finance when I was going into college, and that was because I did a kind of competitive business event in high school, and I did a finance event there. And so knew going to college that I wanted to pursue something within finance services,
Mhm.
but I didn't know what investment banking was going into college. It was only after going through the recruitment process of a few clubs that I kind of realized that, oh, a
Mm.
lot of people who are interested in finance in college tend to go into investment banking, and so you could say I was pigeonholed. I feel like that kind of that's a appropriate term to use. But I guess given that the vast majority of econ majors at UCLA pursue either banking or consulting,
Mhm.
out of those two, banking spoke more to me. And so, yeah, I guess to summarize your question, didn't I knew that I wanted to go into finance, going into college. It was only after I spent some time there that I figured out investment banking.
So was that like I guess you were probably part of was it the Bruin hedge fund or were you part
I
of
was not. No, I think that's one of the reasons why I can get into that later, but one of the reasons why WSO helped me out so much because I wasn't a part of those clubs like Bruin Hedge Fund,
why
Bruin Asset Management.
get in, or like you just didn't apply?
Yeah, I just didn't get in. It's really competitive to get into those clubs, unfortunately.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about that process because I'm curious, like, because you joined us in November of your sophomore year, so
Yes.
right before recruiting kind of kicked off. So what I'd
Yeah.
consider not like late, but really kind of on the edge of like if you had
Yeah.
waited any longer, it would have probably really hindered your ability to get ready, like fully get ready. So talk to me a little bit about just like that whole freshman year, what you were discovering, and like I assume were you applying to these clubs freshman year and like didn't get in then?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes, I was. That's
talk
right.
to me a little bit about that and like what was going through your head in terms of like prepping for those because you're kind of can prep for they're so competitive that you almost have to prep in terms of why you want to be part of it and stuff. Talk to me about like what you were doing there. Was it like online research, YouTube videos, other like how did you even know how to prep for that?
Yeah, so a lot of at least the for how the processes kind of work for these clubs is that usually it's gonna be a resume drop with a bit of some essays to write. If you pass that stage, then you move on to coffee chats, which are kind of like group it's like in a group setting. You answer kind of informal questions in kind of a group setting there.
Mhm.
More of like a culture check.
Mhm.
And then if you pass that stage, then it's gonna be a final round interview.
Mhm.
And so for me, I guess for the first round of applications that I went through, I was struggling to get past the resume stage. I guess it might have been a combination of maybe my essays weren't strong enough, or I guess I just didn't have enough experience, but I'm not sure what kind of experience they were looking for a freshman just going into college. I got to a few coffee chat stages. Didn't pass some of those, probably again due to, I guess, I just wasn't prepared in terms of my behavioral questions,
Mm,
maybe putting my personality out there because they are looking for very outgoing people. And when I first entered college, I was still very much in my shell. I wasn't a very outgoing person back then. I did get a few final round interviews in terms of how I prepped for those. In terms of the technical portion, they sent out the like breaking into Wall Street guides to all those who made it to the final round stage to prep for the technical portion.
mm,
And then for everything else, I did a bit of, like tell me about yourself, other types of behavioral question prep beforehand. Um, Also did a bit of research as to what kind of benefits that the club offered and kind of why I wanted to how I would take advantage of the benefits.
mhm,
For me, I think probably what hurt me the most in the interviews was not researching market questions enough because I didn't realize that, that was a key portion of a lot of these interviews back when I was a freshman. So
yeah.
I didn't really understand like a lot of the macroeconomic trends, things like that, how to research those things. And so I think that was one of the, I guess, probably the biggest things I was cut off on for the interviews.
Talk to me a little bit about just how many different clubs you applied to and like because it sounds like this is like three or
Yeah.
four processes and all of them either ended up final round or you're not even getting past the first round. Was it like 10 clubs or was it three clubs and you got into none? Or talk to me a little bit about that because that's pretty disheartening.
Yeah, it was very disheartening. I think it was one of the reasons why I feel like I didn't enjoy my freshman year that much, just because I was so like, I mean, my confidence kind of shot because after going through all those processes, it was about at least 10 clubs, I would say. Not all of them were finance clubs, some of them were consulting clubs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it was maybe just a combination of me not being prepared enough, me not maybe dedicating my mind enough to these processes. But yeah, it was very disheartening.
Looking back, do you think you're when you in terms of getting selected for even the in-person one, do you feel like your resume was missing something, maybe just a little empty since it was freshman year? Potentially, or was
I
it more
think,
like because you didn't really have a GPA to go off of until second semester?
yeah.
What do you think it was? Was it just formatting was off, or
I feel like for the first round of application, I think it's definitely my format. I had a lot of white space on my resume for the first round of applications.
yeah,
I think for the second round that freshman year, like in the winter, I think a lot of that might have been based on my essays. I feel like I reused a lot of my essays from the fall cycle, so that might have hurt me in that regard. But yeah,
curious what you think about like AI on essays because it's so easy to kind of leverage AI now to write
sure,
really flowery essays that can come across as disingenuous. Were you, I'm sure what most people would do, and I think what most people should do is leverage AI to kind of get yourself 80, 90% of the way there, but then
yeah,
really edit it heavily to look more human and feel more authentic.
yeah, yeah,
Or work with the AI to say, hey, this feels too robotic, make it more, authentic. And so, talk to me about that. And you don't have to say you used AI. You don't have to like admit you did, but like talk a little bit. Like, is that something you've found? Because in terms of like, it's obviously all new for the last few years. It's something that's become now just everyone uses it, right? For this,
yeah,
yeah, especially this type of thing where it's like an essay
for
format.
sure,
And so,
yeah.
talk about that. Like, how did you work with that?
So I actually didn't use AI at all for my essays. I feel like, I mean, looking back, I probably should have. I probably should have taken advantage
Yeah.
of the technology, but I didn't use AI to write my initial drafts. I kind of did the opposite of what you said. Instead of
Mm,
having AI write kind of the initial 80 to 90%, then edit it afterwards,
yeah.
I use AI towards the end to kind of get my essay below the word limit. So I'd like to kind of edit out unnecessary chunks, improve my grammar, things like that. So it's kind of the opposite of what you said.
Interesting. Okay. So do you feel like well we can get to other questions later. So talk to me a little, let's talk go back to your story. So
Mhm.
you applied to how many different clubs would you say in your freshman year?
At least 10, might have been closer to like 13,
Were there
14 around there.
were there any that you got into?
In my sophomore year, I got into one, but
Okay.
nothing freshman year.
Literally like 90% rejection rate. Okay, so
Yeah,
not
yeah.
a very that's pretty shocking. I mean, it's not like you were coming in, you didn't have like a bad GPA after your first semester, right? From what I
No,
remember.
I had a 4.0 after my
Yeah,
first semester,
so
so
it's just strange. I don't know what they're basing this off of. Maybe you were again in your shell a little bit when
yeah, I feel like that.
we're in these group setting chats. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because that's super interesting. It reminds me of some of the assessment centers in the UK where they
Okay.
in a group and they force you to like have a conversation on a specific case to see who's either obnoxious or overly pushy or who's too quiet, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
to see can somebody interject politely and kind of work in a team well. Was that kind of what you're talking about, or was it more of like three or four people kind of just talking with you? Was it like a group on
Pretty
group?
much what you said. Generally the candidates are going to be split into groups of around 4 or 5 people, and then the club members are going to rotate in between different tables, and then ask all the candidates, a question or two, and then the candidates all go one after the other to answer that question.
Oh, so they're kind of given a turn rather than it being an open-ended.
Yes, yeah,
That's
yeah.
a
It's
little
not an open-end
and
discussion.
kind of embarrassing because you're giving like the person who goes first has an advantage because they
Yeah, that's one of my biggest issues with the whole coffee chat format because a lot of it's just about if you can think of an answer, quickly on the fly,
yeah.
and then, like cross that topic off the board.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know if you're probably too young to remember Family Feud where like
No, I did actually watch that when I was younger. Yeah,
so
maybe I
Family
shouldn't have.
Feud is
I
like
probably I probably shouldn't have watched it, but yeah,
the
I do know
obvious
about
answers
that.
crossed off the board and you're like, oh no, what do I say?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So you're kind of going through this. I mean, it's pretty upsetting. So when did you hear about Academy? Because you're kind of going through at this point, like by end of freshman year, I assume you were like, hey, I still want banking, but I didn't get into
Yeah.
the hedge fund. I didn't get into all these other whatever consulting clubs or other finance clubs. Did you feel like you had a chance still? Did you still had some inner confidence, or what was your kind of mindset at that point?
I think I honestly, when I look at my mindset, I think I still wanted to, put forth my best effort to the process and try to see if I could get anything.
Mhm.
But I think on when I was talking to my parents kind of about what I should do, a lot of at least what they told me was that your technicals really aren't up to par. You
Your
don't really
parents told you
have.
your technicals weren't up to par? I love
Yeah,
that.
but I knew that deep down as well. So I guess I
How
kind of
did
needed
they know
that.
that? Are they in finance? Is your dad or mom in finance?
They're not, but they were listening on a few mocks my brother and I were doing, and
Oh,
it wasn't sort of, yeah, I didn't really perform that well in
got it.
those. But yeah, so they were the ones who actually kind of proposed the idea of going to WSO Academy. I knew of the program beforehand, but
Yeah.
at least I didn't ever consider really beforehand at least of enrolling or applying.
Okay.
Um, but after talking with them, I kind of thought about my situation, and I really hadn't done much networking. Even though it's still the summer,
Yeah.
um, I at least I hadn't a lot of the kids in the clubs, at least they were speaking with alumni and stuff.
Yeah.
And that wasn't me. I wasn't doing that. And so, when I was thinking about kind of how I can get ready in such a short amount of time, I think, yeah, after speaking with my parents, kind of thinking about it on my own, I knew that I would need some sort of outside help to do that.
Yeah. And so you're kind of at this point, it's, November when you came to us, or maybe you enrolled in slightly early October time frame, but how many people would you say, speaking of networking, had you spoken with kind of leading up to that? Was it like 20 to 30 at that point? I assume that it wasn't zero, right? So
It wasn't zero, yeah.
like was it 10, 20 at that point, or what would you say?
It was around 10, yeah, but much less than what would be good.
Pretty
Yeah.
low. Okay. And then talk to me about how you approach this, because I know we have something called the critical path inside the program where if you're a little
hmm
bit later, you can kind of just fire through the most critical assignments to like if you're approaching recruiting or in recruiting. Is that what you did, or did you kind of go step by step, still getting the, LinkedIn profile audit done, all the other things, like trying to just get through it faster than 12 weeks, like the sprint portion? Yeah. Tell me about that because you're
Yeah.
coming pretty close to recruiting. I think I remember December 4th, 4 firms opened up. So only a month
Yeah.
you joined like
Yeah.
Houlihan and a few others. So did that surprise you? And talk to me a little bit about like that, um, the cadence of assignments you did and like how fast were you able to launch your networking after you joined? Because typically it's like week 5 or 6, whereas like
hmm
standard.
Yeah.
But did you compress that at all and kind of accelerate it?
I did for sure. Yeah, I was very surprised that Houlihan opened so early. I believe their LA application actually opened, I think, in late November. And I was like, man, like, what are y'all doing? But
That is crazy.
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like this
but
year for 28s, it's going to be like a lot.
yeah. I think if the bulge brackets push the deadlines before January 1st, it's like every bank for themselves, I guess, at that point.
Yeah. my gosh,
But
don't scare me. We gotta
yeah,
get.
going back to your question, I think I definitely did the critical path part. I didn't really do the LinkedIn audit.
Yeah,
Pretty much how I approached it was at first, I think almost immediately, I just got my resume in order.
yep,
Added a bit more meat on the bones and formatted it a bit better.
yep.
And then after that, it was maybe around like we end of week one, beginning of week two at least, or around somewhere around there. That's when I started
Early,
networking. Because
okay, early November. So
yeah,
you just went out of the gate. Did you leverage
yeah.
any of the LinkedIn automation, or was it more cold email and just hitting up like your limits on LinkedIn? Cold like did you supplement cold email with LinkedIn
I
automation?
didn't actually. I didn't use LinkedIn automation at all, and I probably should have looking back on it to get more hits. But for me, it was just pretty much just cold outreach on the email.
And I assume alum initially.
A
Just
lot initially, yeah,
okay. And then talk to me about your hit rates and like how many calls you were getting on to, within a few weeks. 'Cause usually what happens, you start networking, you're like, it's not working, no one's responding. And then like 2 to 3
yeah,
weeks later, it starts rolling in terms of
yeah.
start getting more responses with the follow-ups. Talk to me a little bit about that volume and that like conversion rate from, let's say 100 cold emails led to how many replies, led to how many coffee chats.
Yeah, so honestly, I feel like my conversion rate wasn't that great. Even more toward even after I was sending out follow-ups, I feel like maybe either I wasn't reaching out to the right people or maybe I wasn't wording it correctly, but my hit rate wasn't actually that well. I think maybe out of 100, I was probably getting somewhere around either between 5 and 10 responses.
Not bad.
But usually
Were they
all of those
alum?
was
Were they alum?
not
That's
not all of them were alum, not all of them
yeah.
were alum.
If that was alum, they'd be low, but on a pure cold email, that's actually not that bad. That's
Oh, okay.
pretty,
Okay.
yeah.
Not bad. Yeah, but I think usually my coffee chat success rate was pretty good. I think you almost all of my emails were able to convert into coffee chat, so that was something good.
That's great. Yeah, typically what we see on our LinkedIn automation and our conversions there is about a 20 to 40% acceptance rate on the connection request, somewhere between 20 and 40, 40 on the very high end if like they're
Hmm.
alum and you're at a target school or they have a strong
Yeah,
alumni base. 15% on the very low end if you're like at a super non-target with like a weak alumni base, but usually between
gotcha.
20 to 30. And so usually what we say is like the max on the LinkedIn's is about 100 connection requests a week. So you're getting about 20 to 30 new connections from there. Of that group, when you do the email follow-ups, typically it's about 10 to 20% of those people will get on a call with you. So that's
I
why we have
see.
that
Okay.
target of like 3 to 5 calls a week. Were you able to hit that through your cold email, through the cold email? Because usually what we would say for people in this stage where you're a little bit on the later end is do both. Like do the LinkedIn,
Yeah,
do the LinkedIn,
yeah.
the cold email, because the cold email is a little bit lower conversion, but it does get you more calls. So were you able to get to kind of those 3 to 5 calls a week or even higher?
I was not. I was only able to get around 2 or 3, which is why looking back on it, should have done the LinkedIn
But
automation
okay, so
probably.
2 to 3 a week, it's not like the end of the world because you started in November, so you had like, a good only 4 weeks before those four firms opened up, but probably 8 to 12 weeks before kind of most were open.
Yeah.
So you went from, let's call it 10 calls. How many do you by like end of January had you done? Not processes, but just like coffee chats.
I want to say somewhere between 20, 25, 30 around there.
So it wasn't that high. You didn't get
Yeah,
like for
yeah. So it
people
wasn't that
listening
high.
to this, like standard for us in terms of what we like to see is between like 50 on the very low end up to like 120 at the high end is like
Yeah. Hmm.
120 is a little bit crazy, but like our average student typically is going into recruiting with about 70 or so chats under their belt. Of those 25, Andrew, was it dispersed across a lot of like middle markets, bulge brackets? Talk to me about like, the was it like all like Houlihan and like William Blair, like a few others, like talk because sometimes people have like hyper concent they talk to a lot of people, but it's too hyper concentrated. Were you able to
Yeah.
spread it out across a lot of different
I
firms?
think I was spread out across a good amount of bulge brackets and middle markets. I think the bulk of my chats were probably Wells Fargo because I had a couple good connections there, so I
Yeah,
was able to leverage that.
nice.
Um, but yeah, I think I wasn't really targeting kind of I just knew that going in I wanted to do kind of technology banking.
Yeah.
So but whatever bank I ended up at didn't really care. So I think I was pretty spread across both bulge brackets and middle markets.
Talk to me a little bit about okay, so the process. So you're having chats, you're prepping for technicals. I do see on your dashboard here you did a lot of mocks with us and you improved. I can see like
Yeah,
your score was
yeah.
going up and so you were getting better with the grading. that the mentors talk to me a little bit about that process with the mentors. Like, how did you feel about those mocks and even the other discussions in the sessions you did with them?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the mocks. I think they were probably the single biggest contributing factor to me being able to get an offer.
Mhm.
Um, how I approached those was at least I was originally sort of I know there's kind of like a filter that you can use on the mentors where you can kind of figure out like which coverage group or which location that you feel like at least mentors are in and which are applicable to you. But for me, at first, at least I went into kind of the mentor or the mock interviews being randomly paired up with mentors. And then after I had a few under my belt, I identified which ones at least I had really good conversation with and who really gave me really good feedback. And I went back to them to ask for more mocks. So I think it's really important. I think it's important to figure out kind of which mentors you feel like can really root for you and can really like help you out in that regard. Of course, all the mentors are great,
Yeah.
but I think there were a few that I kind of really formed a good relationship with, and so I think that's kind of the key part to the program for sure.
Did you go to any of the boot camps or anything like that to help improve, like do the interview boot camps or the modeling boot camps, or did you kind of leave that for later after you got the offer? Because some,
I did, yeah. I did one modeling boot camp
yeah,
in I think in December,
yeah.
but I left the rest of them
I sometimes say
after
like
after.
hold off on a lot of the modeling boot camps and just focus on the interview ones because it's like
Mhm.
the skills to land the offer is very different from the skills to survive the internship. And the
Right, that
modeling,
makes sense.
modeling is kind of more important to survive the internship and do well there versus like it can help on the technical side if like you're not from a finance or accounting background, but it's you can have a more efficient preparation path with just the interview courses and the mocks and the like and doing working through the stories. Okay, so yeah, looking back, talk to me about let's dive into recruiting. So you how many mocks do you think you got done before, let's call it like the main kind of thing kicked off? Like obviously December 4th there were four firms, but let's say before
Yeah.
January 1st, did you get like five or six mocks done or what was the
I'd say I was a little light on the mocks too, and maybe only around like three or four.
okay, and then January 1st comes around, I assume you had been submitting to like the four firms that opened up in December.
Yeah.
Talk to me about like the number of first rounds you landed. Because remember, we were only at 25 firms. Maybe out of those 25 people, there was like 10 different firms or 15 different firms. Did you land five first rounds? I don't know. We haven't talked about this. So was it five first rounds, three first rounds? Um, going into that, I would have been nervous for you because I'm like, oh, that's not a
Hmm.
super wide, touch point or network to help you kind of get those
Yeah.
first. And that's really the main point of the coffee chats is like to land double digit first rounds. So did you get close to that? Tell me the numbers.
Yeah, that was not the case at all for me.
Yeah.
I think in
You're
terms of
riding on the
firms,
edge, Andrew. You're riding on the edge.
yeah. Yeah, I like looking back, when I look back on kind of the whole process, yeah, I think in terms of the number of first rounds and like process that I got into relative to the amount of hours that I did, I
Yeah.
got very lucky.
Yeah.
I think I only got maybe around like
think it was
three,
I don't
three.
think it was lucky that you landed an offer because you did put in the work. Like I can see the number of hours you did with the mentors. Like you put in a lot of work to improve your interviews. So it doesn't surprise me that you converted one of them. It was just a higher risk strategy not to focus
Yeah,
a bit more on the networking side to give
yeah,
yourself more at bats, right? So you said around three first rounds.
yeah, around three.
So do you mind sharing the firms or are you it's
Yeah, no, I can do that. I got first round for Piper Sandler,
yep,
KeyBank,
yep.
and William Blair.
And Blair. Cool. Okay. And then timing wise, because this is always very tricky. Sometimes firms come really early, trying to
Mhm.
nab you and put you into pressure, get you an offer before the other processes. Did you find you were put in that position, or was it more pretty similar backgrounds? You didn't have like an exploding offer.
No, I wasn't really under that much pressure. I think a lot of my processes came more towards the middle or the end of recruiting. I wasn't really pressured really at the beginning.
Got it. Okay. So was it like March, would you say?
Yeah, it's around March for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. So you're kind of coming in. Let's talk about Blair because that's where you ended up, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, were you like that first round? Can we talk about like that first round, second round? How did it go? And then, yeah, in terms of like Zoom, I assume, or was it like any in office, Super Day? I'd love to hear about that.
So I think my process was really unconventional. I I submitted a lot of networking emails to people at Blair,
Mhm.
but I got a response from somebody, I think the week before Super Day invites were set to go out. So I think instead of this being like a networking chat, I think it was kind of more of like an informal first round
Oh,
because I wasn't the one asking questions. He was the one kind of like grilling me about like technicals and
yeah.
behaviorals and things like that. So I don't know, this is like I keep thinking about this and it was so weird. I don't think I had like a formal first round interview because after my chat with him, that's when I got the Super Day invite. So I think like he must have like liked me or thought I thought I could be
Had
like a pretty solid.
had you spoken with other people at the firm in the past?
No, this is the first guy that I spoke
That's
to.
amazing. Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, so
So
you
I really don't know what happened, but yeah, he must have had some confidence in me or something.
okay, was he an alum?
No, he was not, which is even more surprising.
Okay, so you kind of talked to me a little bit about that chat. Was it like half hour, 45 minutes? Yeah, talk
It
to me.
was about, I think it was about half an hour.
Yeah.
Um, I mostly got grilled on a lot of like software market questions, which I was prepared for because of a lot of the mocks and things like that.
Yep.
But yeah, it was essentially just like an informal interview, basically.
Yeah. Do you feel like you were confident kind of going into that? Like, were you surprised when it kind of suddenly,
It very much caught me off guard. But I think once I like kind of realized, oh, like he's the one that's going to be asking me the questions. I think I kind of fell back on a lot of the skills, like the interview skills that I learned in the mock interviews, and like a lot of the knowledge that I had amassed. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it caught me off guard initially for sure, but I think I was pretty decently prepared.
Okay. And so you got through that, and then like the super days the next week, like what's going through your mind?
Yeah.
Like, so you're immediately called like the day after, what, the hour out, talk to me about
I got the email maybe like 2 days after telling me about the Super Day.
nice.
So I was very pleasantly surprised. But also like I was panicking a little bit because I thought like, oh yeah, I'm not ready for this at all. So I crammed maybe like 3 or 4 mocks within the next week to really get ready. They helped me a lot for sure.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think Cindy in particular, she helped me a lot with a lot of software market questions. So
Nice.
big thanks to her. Um, and yeah, I mean, after all those mocks, I thought I was honestly pretty decently prepared because at least um, practiced a lot of the paper LBO questions because I know Blair at least they do a lot of like they have a lot of like sponsor relationships. So
Yep.
I knew that like an LBO would probably be somewhere within Super Day, and it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went into the Super Day feeling optimistic, optimistic about my chances.
Nice. And so talk to me about like the structure of the super day and like what that looked like and like so you show up or was it live or
It was remote.
remote?
Surprising. I thought it was
Yeah,
going to be
talk
in
to me
person,
about
but.
like just that that whole thing.
So mine was 4 rounds of 30-minute conversations. Um, in terms of technicals, it was actually very light. I only had the one paper LBO, which was very surprising. A
Yeah.
lot of it was behavioral, more market-related questions.
Mhm.
Um,
You say market related, what do you mean? Like, hey, tell us about like what's going on with the Fed right now and interest
yeah,
rate?
or some of it was more macroeconomic. A lot of it was more towards about the overall technology industry and a lot of those kind of trends,
Yep.
things like that. Um, I really enjoyed my conversations actually. I was actually having fun, which is very surprising. Like I think a lot of the bankers I really vibe with a lot of them. I could tell that at least the culture was really good. And at least they made the conversation really easy. They were like treating this as like a conversation rather than an interview. So
Yeah.
I was actually having a lot of fun in the interviews, which is very surprising, but I appreciated that.
Yeah.
And then you coming out of the interview, um, I was feeling again optimistic because I had a lot of fun. So, I was thinking in my mind that, if I had fun, maybe they had fun too. Maybe they'd like me as a candidate. So yeah, I came out of the interview also pretty at least cautiously optimistic.
Do you feel like that that ability to kind of let go and have fun in that sort of high pressure situation is something that like you naturally had, or is it something that you developed? Is it something that they just were good at getting out of candidates because they were kind? Because I do think the Blair culture is a strong culture. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
like, did you experience that in your other super days as much, or was it something like for some of the bankers you were able to do it and others you weren't? Like, because you always run into that one banker
Yeah.
one interview that they're like super serious, grill you on technicals, and are like not going to have a good time or having a bad day. Talk to me
Yeah.
about how you handled that kind of those situations.
I think it was a combination of both on my end and also on their end.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier that at least I came into college kind of very much being in my shell, but after I think doing a lot of these coffee chats, I think I've learned how to talk to people a lot better, how to be a lot more energetic in these conversations. And so, through a lot of my coffee chats, through a lot of my first rounds, I think I was able to at least get more up to speed with at least kind of how to really talk with people, how to find a connection with them. And
Hmm.
so, throughout the super day, I was kind of doing that. I was, being a lot, at least, while still being formal, being a lot more kind of more of a conversationalist rather than treating this as formal interview. But, like you said, definitely on their end too, the Blair culture is really strong.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys were really kind, really nice. They were really talkative too. So,
Yeah.
it's a combination of them also making things easy for me,
Yeah.
but I think also still me, trying to approach this as more of a conversation.
Can you give me an example? Was it something where like they gave you an opening to talk about a hobby or something, and like you were talking about that? Was it like they were asking more about your interest, or was it something else like that you were able to turn the conversation?
They were asking about my interests a lot, but also even more for like a lot of the market questions, they would ask me a question, I would give an answer, they would follow up, and it would just be more of a conversation in that regard. So they treated the format
Mm,
as kind of like a, like instead of, like a back and forth where you say something and then I say something,
yeah.
we would like casually interject every now and then. So I think, they treated this very much, at least they made the environment very much conducive to being able for me to at least to kind of let go a bit.
That's awesome. Okay, so um, was that similar at the other kind of super days, the KeyBank and the what was the other firm you were at?
Piper Sandler.
Piper Sandler. Was it similar there, or was it a little more technical there? Because it seems like Blair leaned heavily on behaviorals.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
there others that were similar? Were they similar in terms of like ratio, technical to behavioral? What would you say
I
there?
think KeyBank was a mix, but 50-50 split between technical and behavioral.
Yep.
And then Piper Sandler was, I'd say, maybe 60-40 in terms of behavioral versus technical.
Got it. Okay, so more behavioral, still slightly more behavioral. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually we see 20 to 40% of the questions are technical. It's usually not
Mm-hmm.
50%. It's pretty
Yeah,
strange.
yeah,
At least with multiple rounds, sometimes you'll get one interview that's like all technical. Like
yeah.
an associate grilling, and that's their job is just to figure out how strong you are.
Yeah.
Um, so looking back, I guess so. Yeah, tell me like so you finished up that super day at Blair. When did you get a call or a email or like how did it happen in terms of you knowing you had the internship offer?
I got the call the next day. This is actually this was the week before finals week. So might have been poor timing because I definitely slacked off in terms of preparing for my finals because I was like, I'm just gonna celebrate, whatever. But yeah, I got the call the next day.
Nice, man. That must have been a relief. I'm sure your parents were happy too.
Yeah.
Very good,
It
man.
was,
Kind of
yeah.
looking back, any kind of advice you would give your younger self, yourself like 9 months ago
Mhm.
there? Yeah.
First of all, for sure, start prepping for technicals in your freshman year. I think if I if I could have taken the time that I used in the fall to prepare for technicals to instead do outreach,
Yeah.
I would have done much more in terms of my first round interview hit rate.
Yeah.
So definitely, front loading a lot of your technical prep is going to be it would have been much better. And then again, like we've been saying as well, going much more harder on the networking in the fall and the recruiting, would have I think I would have had a lot more to choose between.
Yeah, I think it would have been rather than three. I think you could have gotten to 7 to 10 first round.
Yeah.
At
Mhm.
least.
Yeah.
Usually we like to see 10 to 12 because it makes us very comfortable that
Yeah.
when you're scoring high enough in the mocks, you're going to be getting at least like a handful of super days. And that's just basically almost not guaranteeing, but it's very difficult to if you're a good interviewer to strike out across like 4 super days.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, sharing your story. Of course, stay in touch. Let us know if we can help you kind of
Yeah.
get ready for the summer internship. Definitely come to more boot camps for that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, stay in touch, man. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Thank you for again for all that you do for the academy and also for allowing me to kind of speak about my experiences.
Awesome, man. Talk soon.